dating from the end of the Iron Age, the findings have upended our understanding of the kingdom of Judah under Assyrian rule in the 7th century BCE.
Mm-hmm.
That's a new biblical archaeology.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the latest one?
July, August, September, and October.
Oh, yeah.
They're really,
Lumping it all together.
yeah. They must be having a
Well,
hard time.
archaeology moves slow.
And they don't want to say, nobody wants to
What?
say anything. They want to keep their discoveries hush hush until years later.
Well, when you're digging out a site with a toothbrush, it's not exactly like you need a monthly publication.
How far y'all got? Same where it was yesterday.
We got down about 6 inches in the last
Here
year.
we go. Going live.
Going live on Facebook.
We are live.
Good deal.
Are we live or are we Memorex?
Okay,
Yes, sir.
I believe we're up.
We
Go
up?
ahead. Yep.
All right, Shabbat Shalom, and welcome back. This is our dialogue on tracking the tribes, and I had fun this morning. I really liked that map, and I can't believe we hadn't pulled it out before. But I think it was the perfect class for that. We don't need a map every time. Sometimes we don't need the visual aids. But I do want to start incorporating more elements into the teaching rather than me just sit there and pontificate on various passages when I can show and demonstrate and illustrate. So I've really been in a lot of prayer and thought about how do you put handles on the text? How do you make it where it's relatable? And how do we take the message and help people to really understand it? So, look, I get geography is not everybody's strong point. Not everyone likes different subjects. But this is important that we kind of get a picture in our mind of what took place and what the Bible's describing. Everybody all right with the map? Did you like it? Sound like you guys did.
It was good.
Hopefully the map helped. And I tell you, I'm asking for somebody to help me. I've done some preliminary searches. What I would really like, in United Israel, I would like us to own a very nice set, but I can't find them. It's not like I just don't have the money and I'm begging for money. That's not it. I haven't been able to find big classroom maps. Like when you old guys were young, not you ladies and me, but when you guys in that corner, when you were in school and they pulled down the map, I want those that big.
I don't think they make them anymore.
They have to make them. Somebody makes them. But I want the biblical world, this kind of map, and the divided kingdom, the united monarchy, so you can pull it up. And like Lyndon said, we meant to make one like someone did this one. It's a beautiful map. I think they used a projector and traced it, and then somebody could paint it. But anyway, so if you find those, send me a link. Let me look. I've looked a little bit, but not too much. And I know they make them, like the size like a big sheet of poster paper. I'm talking about a big map like that. So anyway, if you find something like that, let me know.
Oh yeah, we have enough artistic people in
That's right.
Either that
the
or
United Israel that
Either that or Russ needs a monitor on this side of a green screen, And he can change the map,
Well, that's the other thing. We do have options to where we can do things electronically, but
High tech.
Yeah, we can use technology, but old school works sometimes. In this case, I think it worked. Dave, you did a great job as always, but you had the picture right, and it allowed us to do everything the way we needed to. And thanks for the camera, Mark. I mean, it all worked together. See, but it was
It all works together.
That's
It's
that's
like
it.
exactly right.
it gave. I know I'm probably not the only one, but it gave me a totally new perspective on the whole journey, Abraham's journey,
Right.
and the two rivers and all of that, and it's just awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it helps. It gives you a visual, and I think that's what allows us to kind of look into the text. Remember, one of the things that I try to stress when you read these biblical stories and you're following along the narrative, there are different aspects. You have to get the context. You need to understand the history. You need to understand the geography as well. And this is something that we haven't really delved into as a group, but it's essential. I think a lot of times we read, and Abram went from Ur to Haran, and you think,
yeah.
that's like, hey, go to the grocery store. It's like right there. No, it's not right there. It's like a hike. And I think whenever you look at, and that's the other thing about touring Israel,
Oh, exactly. Like in the Torah reading, where it talks about the tribes and setting up judges and things like that, until we met Muhammad, the Bedouin,
Yeah.
and saw, just kind of understood that while they are modernized, they still are in that ancient tribal system. It's like the whole mindset, the culture is still tied to the ancient ways.
Dave is Muhammad's buddy. Dave helped Muhammad a lot
Yeah.
when we were there with Muhammad. One time when Dave and I were there, Muhammad's back was bothering him, and Dave became his back for him, and he cut wood for him, for his family, and really got, so anytime if I'm there and Dave's not there, Muhammad said, hey, where's Dave? I said, well, he didn't make it this time. Yeah, he's looking around for him.
Yeah, and when I
Hold my back, where's Dave?
and when I introduced myself to him, I met him the first time. I'm Dave's wife.
Yeah. But it's funny because you talk about the people, call them the people of the desert. Bedouin means of the desert. And Bedouin in the desert. And the Bedouin, they still preserve some of these ancient traditions. And you learn by talking to them, like they live in tents. And one of the things about this, for instance, like Dave would go out to the wood pile initially and he'd say, which one do you want? And there's certain kind of woods that burn that don't give the smoke, because he's like trying to light a fire in his tent. And so he was showing Dave, I don't want that. I want this kind. But, when you think about, we're going to ultimately get into the wilderness journeys and where the tribes went. There are elements to the story that you can bring in to further illuminate the text. And geography is a very big one. Look, I want people to think about this week. Look in the back of any study Bible that you might have, or look online if you prefer an electronic Bible, and just Google Maps. Like Google biblical maps, and you'd be surprised at how it brings to light certain aspects.
Tours help, like you said, in ways that you can't get off a map. In other words, you can look at a map, and it's not the
Murals.
same. It's not the same thing as looking at something with your eyes.
Yeah.
Lynn and I had that opportunity to go to Jordan before we joined you for the tonight. I was telling Mark, you can stand on that point on Mount Nebo, and the act that Moses was at when God showed him Israel, and you can look across and you can see Israel. You can actually see it.
Cool.
It's, so when they describe that in the scriptures, and you stand there and you go, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Well, it's real.
Mm-hmm.
It's not
Yeah,
just
that's right.
something somebody made up.
That's right. Yeah, and several of you are already, I see my inbox going off with different maps and
Everybody's
so
Googling
forth.
maps.
Hey, that's
right
great.
now.
Hey,
Ain't nobody
listen. Hey, listen. But I appreciate that. And what I want you to do is you're going to find some that are on an easel, Those are good. But think about my audience is going to be like it was today. The bigger, the better.
Yeah.
So if we can find, I guess you would call them big wall maps, classroom, think of those terms when you Google, because I use all the time this map that the Tylers got us, and that's very good as well.
Does that roll up?
Huh?
It rolls up mechanically?
It does. Well, no,
Or it
no,
doesn't-
it's just
not
a manual
like a
roll.
scroll.
Okay, okay.
But you can roll it up. But so that's kind of what I'm thinking. The bigger, the better. The one that we use today is something that I think is really good. So if you can help us locate some of those,
Especially
maybe
for the
we
older
can.
people, because it's got big letters.
And I was telling
Yeah.
Lyndon bought me this. I guess last year, wasn't it? It's an atlas of the Bible. If you find it, it's by National Geographic. Let me see if
Wow.
there's a date on it. It was about this time last year, September of 18. And there are 17 gorgeous. Nat Geo makes wonderful maps. Oxford makes wonderful maps. I just don't know if they make them like this. Or if I could get permission to print these on a big sheet of canvas, make our own somehow. But the point is, geography is essential.
I know who can do it.
Who?
You know that frog skin? You could give them a picture, and they actually wrap vehicles
Oh,
with
yeah. Oh,
whatever.
yeah.
You could get them to put it on a big piece of canvas.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's
They're
it's already a big old piece of canvas right
no, I
there.
mean another
Other
any
different
other
maps
maps
for
you
different
want.
periods.
All you'd have to
Yeah.
do is give them a picture,
Yep,
Huh.
that's right.
and they are what? They're on the way to Clinton.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
on
they're
how-
working.
on
So we've got
how
some
I-
ideas
yeah.
out there. The other thing that I want to do is, as we get into this study, I want to bring in a lot more of, a little bit more detail around who's here now, who lives in this,
Yeah.
region. Where is Iraq? Where is Iran? Where is Syria? These boundaries that make up the current geopolitical world that we have today. First of all, you need to know that a lot of these countries, that these areas are filled with tribal groups, and these are, as some people call them, colonialists, design
Yeah.
these coming out of the world wars.
You know how you could do that, Ross?
Hmm.
I don't know if you've ever seen, like the old encyclopedias. They have the vinyl
Yep.
The
Like,
overlays.
overs that you
Yep.
put over the map.
Do all that
We have
electronically
books
now.
like,
Yeah,
we have books
yeah.
in the library that you
Yeah,
have
Yeah.
an
Pull it
overlay.
back.
Right.
yeah,
Remember anatomy,
And you
human
look
yeah,
anatomy.
yeah,
Looks through
yeah.
it. Yeah.
You could do that with
That sounds
like
good, but if
ancient.
you're talking about one that's like, 10 by 15 or something, that's a lot of
Yeah.
visqueen to move.
Well,
The thing that came to my mind that you said that really is like, how many times have these people been removed from the land?
mm-hmm.
And how many more times
Yeah.
is this going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
Are we truthfully going back now? Because they've gone back. They've been removed. They've gone back. They've been removed.
Mm-hmm.
They've gone back. They've been removed. How many times in the Bible were they removed from the land?
Well, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about. We've got a couple of major deportations. The Northern Kingdom is where I started focusing today. Now, depending on my personal studies, those of you who know me know that, next week is up in the air right now. But as I unpack the subject matter, it can be that I can now, I have almost 200 years of history to cover where we've got the Northern Kingdom out and the Southern Kingdom is still in the land. There you go. That's what I'm looking for right there.
They found
It's a build yourself, build your own.
Oh, is it?
Tells you how to do it.
That's what we need.
mate. That's awesome.
So if we think about it, what I'm looking for is
Bookmark that.
how do I best illustrate? So, for instance, when you've got the northern tribes out, there are a lot of the prophecies that are being taught, as you read through some of the prophets are now addressing, in some passages, Judah and Jerusalem, and Israel is gone. All right, so I don't know yet, will I go into talking about Judah's expulsion from the land? Maybe not yet. But I've got a lot of history to cover, but it's bearing, the reason I'm covering this is because it's so essential to understand the unfoldment, it's not a real word, but I like it, the unfoldment of the prophetic decrees. And I want to look at who is the prophet speaking to, of, and about, and how do we make sense of that? A lot of people talk about the tribes and they think it's just, we have no idea. We do have some ideas. We have sources which give us certain bits of information. And so we can follow all those. So anyway, I'm excited about the study going forward, I guess is what I'm talking about. I really am.
At some point, you're gonna have to move from maps to globes.
Yeah. I was about to
Yep.
say, can you show us once
Well,
those
big-
10
big
tribes, start dispersing where?
Yeah, we have some strong speculation. We have some strong indications of where some of these groups
Like a
went.
hurricane
There's a lot
tracking
more
chart
about
with
Judah.
spaghetti lines.
Yes.
There's a lot more about when Judah leaves and where people within the tribe of Judah go.
Oh no,
than
that's
there is
yeah,
the
that's
10 tribes.
oh definitely. Well, we have both actually, but Judah and this isn't like giving away the story, a spoiler. I mean, people. It's like I tell people, you went and saw the Titanic. Everybody knows the boat sinks. I'm giving you the backstory. The beautiful girl with the jewel, and and she lets her boyfriend drown. Remember that part of the story? But the idea with the tribes is we do get all of this backstory, and we do know quite a bit. Judah, we're going to look at prophecies where Judah, who is the only one left, none remain but the tribe of Judah only. And they're told you're going to be exiled for 70 years. Go to Babylon, many of them come back. So currently in today, the question becomes, and this is what we're working towards in the classes, who do we recognize today as Israel, and what happens to that whole other group? Where are they?
I've heard a lot of people say that the nation of Israel is today, presently exists, has all the tribe people, parts of them involved in it. They just don't recognize the separation.
Yeah,
I'm just throwing that in there.
Yeah. No, we'll get into that because what a lot of people, there is an assumption that what is left is all that's left. We'll get into, one of the classes I'm going to teach is the lost tribes according to rabbinic tradition. We'll talk about the lost tribes according to the Christian writings. We'll talk about all those different elements and what are the clues, what are the sources. One thought is that those from the north that attached themselves to Judah, that made it in, that's it. That's all we'll ever know. But what they failed to recognize is the multitudinous prophecies which say no, that's not it, that there are more.
Okay, so this brings me to Vicky's question about Ephraim is part of Egyptian, right? And somebody said yes.
Semitic, yeah.
So where's she coming from with that statement?
Where Vicky is talking about is when we talk about Ephraim, and this is probably where I'm going to go next because it makes sense. How did we get the 12 tribes? It's almost like reading a book where you're kind of flashing back and going forward into history. But one of the things that we have to establish is who are the mothers of these tribes. So, for instance, when Joseph goes to Egypt, he marries Asenath, the daughter of an Egyptian priest of On, and he has 2 children, Ephraim and Manasseh. These children become the ones that represent Ephraim and Manasseh, the two dominant tribes in the northern tribes. So what Vicky is probably referring to there is that Joseph, who is a descendant of Jacob, he's one of the sons, right? And so Rachel's son Joseph marries an Egyptian girl and has two boys. They become part of Israel. Jacob actually tells him, my name will be on your boys, Joseph. So Ephraim and Manasseh are actually listed in some of the later sources as one of the tribes from this point forward. So, but we'll go back and we'll build that, and I think it's going to make a lot more sense. Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, just looking, Miriam says the nation of Israel today is hiding in plain sight right before our eye. I believe that there's some truth in that. And Sylvia said churches don't teach this topic yet, although many people who are beginning to focus on this are coming out of coming from a fundamental Christian standpoint. That's interesting to me. I think it's relevant too. Now look, I know that there's some people out there, some are even, I would consider acquaintances of mine, who laugh at this.
Yeah,
they
some people
think-
are saying, we've already been through all this. We know all this. That's
Somebody saying that now?
No.
yeah. On YouTube, there's a comment of this has all been studied out and hashed out, and
Mm-hmm.
so the idea is that this is a refresher course if you want to go that way, or a reminder. But we're
well-
kind of going through it a little bit more in detail.
Well, I mean, I don't know if they mean that
No.
in an ugly way, like this is
No,
all
no.
old hat, I've already studied it. I've already studied from Genesis all the way through, but I still go through parts of it
Sure.
every week. So
I
for
think
me,
many people are coming into this, and this is very important foundational teaching that is, whether you've been studying it for as long as you have, or you're like me, or you're somebody who's just now aware of it, this is going to be archived. This is really important to get this, to understand it. And I was thinking about even secular friends or acquaintances I've met. I heard one person say something that came to me the other day. It's like, I'm so tired of hearing about all this lost tribes business. And I didn't challenge him on that. And now I would want to know, what do you mean? But it occurs to me that there are a lot of people talking about it, possibly that he has heard. But if you reject the Bible and you reject the Torah, then there, it's like there's no sense in trying to discuss it with that person.
Yeah, and I see the comment now you're referring to, Dave. So what this person is saying, they're very opinionated, and
Sure.
so their view is, I've already got it figured out. Their view is that the Israelites, the so-called lost tribes or whatever, this person, Hodayah Bat Israel, is evidently part of what a group that's called by various terms, but there's this Black Hebrew movement, and they believe that all the Hebrews are black.
Yeah.
Now you have other groups, and some of those groups are quite racist, quite honestly.
Really?
And then you have other groups who go the other way with it, and they say, oh, they all look like me. They're white, and, The truth is, biblically, and this is where we're going with this, because there's so many doctrinal errors out there because people don't know Scripture,
Yeah.
is that they begin to pocket these groups into a singular group, whereas Scripture says that they're scattered throughout all nations as corn is sifted through a sieve, yet not the least grain will fall to the ground. My eyes are on all their ways. Amos, right? We have a lot of indications that these tribal groups were dispersed. And it comes back to this. This is not a racist teaching. There are groups that prefer that. This is not one of those. I'm not one of those. I believe that you can't determine who these
I
Israelites
think it's a
are,
race thing.
but you're going to have some of these Israelites are red and yellow, black and white.
Just
because
as they are in Israel today.
Exactly.
Does it matter?
Well,
Does it?
I
Does it
think to
really?
some
It's a
it
mixing
really
pot.
does, but so I think one of the main points is, and the reason I didn't get into the tribal studies initially, there are people, like I said, who do the British Israelism,
Right.
white Anglo-Saxon, that's who the,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of those are quite racist. But what I want to do is establish from the Bible and from history who these groups are. Again, before I ever got into this, I built the case based on things like Psalm 22, verse 26 and following, that all, from every corner of the globe, people will turn to Jehovah, and that's what we get in Isaiah chapter 45. It's what we get in Isaiah 56.
Humanity is a mixing pot. It really is, and getting more so.
Oh, yeah.
As time goes by, and I can only imagine thousands of years down the road, you know, I think humanity's all going to be pretty similar. I don't see the characteristics being a racial issue.
Yeah, it's way beyond, and I see other people are commenting on this. You know, it's there's no room for any racist ideologies when we talk about the biblical narrative, and one of the main drivers in that is the number of texts which say otherwise. You know, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all
Exactly.
people.
Yes.
And
Is
when-
it Psalm 133? Behold, how good
yeah,
and how
that's
pleasant
right.
it is for brethren to dwell
Isaiah
together.
2, Micah
Yeah.
4, I mean, Isaiah 56, I mean, all of these texts. But I guess in some people's mind, this is all,
It's important.
but to some people, they say, "Oh, I already know all this." But I think a lot of times people miss the details and they don't fully investigate it. So what I want to do with this study is to establish biblically what are these texts talking about, to whom are they addressed, and so forth, because that's
Yeah.
when it really comes alive. I
That's
believe.
an important point is that, you know, you read in the Bible, the land of Israel or the people of Israel, you know, you're pointing out that there's two different groups here. I think it's important
Yeah.
to get that. I
And-
know it gets confusing sometimes when you don't realize that.
And not all of these groups, in any case, are racist. I understand that. But my point is that these tribes ended up in all the lands. You have some that presently might not, and a lot of them don't know who they are. But again, red and yellow, black and white is, I mean, I don't even know if that's politically correct to say anymore, but you know the
it's
story.
not.
You know, it means that the nation of Israel ultimately was scattered throughout all nations. And you can't look at somebody and go, "Oh, you got the right nose," or "You have the right hair," or "You have this."
No, I think
Even within the patriarchs and matriarchs.
But I think you can look at somebody like people who are coming out of different religious backgrounds, and they began to do things like observe the Sabbath, eat a biblical diet, love Torah, love, you know. I think you can see that all over the world. Like that's got to say something. Like something's happening.
Yeah,
Something's happening. These people
it
are coming
definitely
together.
is.
Well, they could be reading their scriptures.
yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But there's something happening that causes these people from all over to relate to this group.
One of the interesting points about when you deal with the African continent, United Israel back in the 40s and 50s was reaching out. You know, there's a show about Ghana, and you know, and some of you saw that here. We showed it, but it's a documentary, and there are groups, you know, in Africa that United Israel actually helped to bring into the fold by sending them, you know, Bibles, the Hebrew Bible, and, you know, sponsored teaching materials and so forth. What's that show called? Ralph was consulted on it. It's something about Ghana. I'll have to look it up. Maybe somebody can help me.
Vicky has
I
a
couldn't even
question.
get a yes on that.
So, what is the final goal? Is it inclusive or exclusive?
It's always inclusive.
I would think so,
It's
because
United
it's a light
Israel,
to the nation.
United Israel, World Union.
Yeah.
See, that's the,
Yeah.
you know, we talk about the
not-
name of the organization.
It's not one group of people ruling over the rest of the world. it's all inclusive.
You
It's
have
not-
Israel has a special place in the plan,
Sure.
and that place tends to reverberate through the ages. But ultimately, this collected group, Israel, United Israel, once all the tribes are together, which they are not, the lost tribes, as they're popularly known, have to unite with Judah.
Sure.
They have to. And a lot of times in this current place in which people are in, there's no attempt to bring those two together.
And you know what? I think that, Vicky, I think that's what Jehovah must want, is to be a light, but also that when this unity takes place, it's like he says, it'll be a sanctuary. I want to dwell with you. And when he sees that is created through the people's hearts,
Yeah.
he's going to come in. People are going to be irresistibly drawn to that. You know, the love, the justice, the righteousness, the health and the wholeness of it. I think it's going to be a spiritual thing that draws people
Yeah.
when this unity happens.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's a long way to go.
Oh, yeah.
And perhaps
Oh,
a short
yeah.
time to get there, as the
Oh,
old
yeah.
saying goes.
But all we can do is work on ourselves and embrace our brothers and sisters.
Yeah, I do think ultimately the plan really is global, in that ultimately the plan is to bring everyone. For instance, the people of Israel are given the Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. They have known and have recited this daily, the Jewish people. But ultimately, according to Zechariah 14, particularly verse 9, and in that day Jehovah will be king over all the earth. He will be one and his name one. So somewhere between Deuteronomy 6:4, then when you get to Micah, one of the things it says in chapter 4, that they, meaning the nations, will walk in the name of his God, but we will walk in the name of Jehovah our God forever and ever. That's the intermediate stage. The final stage is that Jehovah will be king over all the earth. He will be one and his name one. All nations, tongues, languages, people.
His kingdom will be established on earth.
That's right. That's right. So I do think that there is going to be an internalization of the Torah. We get it in various passages, not only in Jeremiah 31 about the termed New Covenant, but we have Isaiah 51. Those who pursue righteousness, who seek Jehovah, are later in verse 7 called the people in whose heart is my Torah. This is an internalization, Torah from the inside, and that's the ultimate goal. And it begins with Israel, but it goes beyond the boundaries of a people, an ethnic group, or whatever. It's actually universal in its approach. And just on that note, I brought it up, but I have come to more and more love Psalm 22. And it says in verse 27, all the ends of the earth shall remember and turn to Jehovah, and all the families of the nations shall worship before you, for kingship belongs to Jehovah, and he rules over all nations. Beautiful. Right? The idea is that ultimately, from sea to shining sea, as Isaiah puts it, from the rising of the sun to the west, everyone will know the name of Jehovah. Isaiah 45, verse 22 and following, it says very clearly that all turn to me and be saved, all the ends of the earth. To me, Jehovah says, every knee will bow, every tongue will swear. So this is the goal. It's global. But Israel still has a mission. Israel has a task, a job, if you will. It's not just I'm Israel, I'm blessed, but it involves a mission to bless others, because the goal is not to be blessed. The goal is, in blessing in your seed, all the families of the earth will be blessed. Big difference. It's one thing to say, I'm blessed, hallelujah, amen, I'm blessed, I'm blessed. Meanwhile, others aren't blessed. The goal is to be a conduit of blessing. So that's what we're looking for. Torah from the inside. So we're going to leave the map up. As Dave said, it's only going to be a problem if I need certain books behind there.
That map will stay there until you need a book out of there. That's what I'm
Uh-huh.
saying. And you can send your.
I got to
grandson
figure out how to
there.
lift it up and get in there with
We
a
can do that.
flashlight,
We
but
can
I
do that.
probably will leave it up for next week as well because I'm not finished with the map. And ultimately, what we're going to see, for instance, what groups, if people begin to look at the various texts which deal with the dispersions, sometimes they look at Deuteronomy 28, verse 64 and following, and they go, look, this is what happened. Here it is. But what they fail to know is which exile does that apply to and to which group. So we have people who are saying, I'm part of the lost tribes, and they're really part of scattered elements of Judah and vice versa. So, but they get to those wrong endpoints because they don't do the homework to get there. They're right and they're wrong. Unfortunately, when you're a little bit wrong, you miss a big key.
Totally wrong. Yeah.
You can be partially right and partially wrong. I'm learning as I go quite often. I think all of us are students first. We're seekers of the way, seekers of truth. But we're going to find a lot as we uncover and unpack this. Does Deuteronomy 4:27 refer to the same exile as Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 64? Do those apply, both of them, to the same exile? Do those two also apply to Leviticus 26, verse 33 and 38? I mean, or do we find evidence in each of those which points to a different group? Like today, I moved the 10 tribes.
They're way up there.
They're in Assyria right now. They're in Aram.
They're on the other side of the river.
Naharaim. They're on the other side of the river.
So if you look at dispersion overall, at some point in time, if you look at that 10 tribes sticker up there, dispersion means to break apart.
Fan
to
out.
Fan out.
Yeah.
Well, not just fan out, but just like an explosion of pieces. So from that location right there, they're on a particular land bridge. They can go east, and they can go west, and they can go north.
Mm-hmm.
They can also go south. But I mean, they're in a place where they can just go anywhere and do.
That's right. And what you're getting at is something that becomes a key in understanding the essence of the biblical message. So, for instance, certain areas in the modern world where people who hunt the tribes are saying, oh, they're among this group in Afghanistan, or they're the British Isles, or they're the Africans, or they're this group, or they're that. What they're doing is they're picking up on pieces of the truth. But what does Scripture say? In other words, for instance, in Hosea, it describes that these scattered ones, in one passage, it talks about and coming from the west. All right? Coming from the west. Now, what's west? Where is that? Is it in Africa? Is it in Asia? Is it in,
New York?
You have to look at where are they coming from. But again, geographic reference is very important to unfolding the eternal decrees. And so what I would say is a lot of these different groups have picked up on very good, solid truth. But it's not the whole truth and nothing but the truth. It's a part of the
Well,
truth.
when you look at the dispersion, when we moved in here and opened this place up, and we got the Torah that we have in the display case.
Mm-hmm.
You know, before I started getting into the Torah, if you would have asked me, well, what does a Jew from India look like? I went, huh? Well,
They got
that's
Jews in
a
India.
scroll from a synagogue that was
Yeah.
in India.
Yeah.
Did they look like I'm just saying,
No.
did they likely look like the same Jews that are in Jerusalem?
The
I
ultra
don't know,
orthodox.
I don't think so.
Did-
They
did-
probably look more like Indians.
Yeah.
Did Joseph look like an Egyptian?
Probably so.
Another pitfall that people make is because of that same idea, they begin to if they believe my people, this color skin is that this is who we are.
Yeah.
Then you have other groups that say no, these European Jews, these Ashkenazi, they're not the real, they're imposters. So you begin to have fighting in between. You know, it's like
You're both
you
wrong
remember
at that
when
point.
I was a kid in school and we had the pep rallies, you'd have two
Oh,
sides of the stage. We got spirit, yes we do. We got spirit. You know, on the other side, but there's a fight. You have one group saying, I'm the real deal, and therefore you're not.
Yeah.
See? And then that group goes, look, versus this, and this fit my people, not your
I
people.
think the key there is there's a huge difference between skin pigmentation and the belief in the scriptures, which would lead you to have a Hebrew faith in any country, even India.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, because they're not
That's what-
white, they're not black.
That's what I'm saying. We need a Hebrew revival.
Yeah, we do.
So, Ross, Sylvia Halpert
Not about
had a
skin,
statement:
man.
the tribal
Not about
descriptions
Not-
help in identifying them. Genesis 49 and Deuteronomy 33. What do you think about that?
Say it
The
again.
tribal descriptions help in identifying them.
It does to a certain degree. It gives us certain characteristics. But one thing that I think I would call it a quasi pitfall as well, and I don't mean to upset anybody here, but there are some people who believe that in vastness, these groups remained as units. So, certain countries, and this is very popular, Davidi and others have done some brilliant work, I'll give them that. They've incorporated various traditional elements and rabbinic writings and legends and myth and so forth. They've come up with certain characteristic traits, almost a list like, yep, you're Zebulun, I can tell because of this, you're from France, you're whatever. But what we're going to look at as we work through this is, do they remain in tribal association,
Identification.
and can you identify
Can
them
you look at
today
them
as
and tell?
individual groups?
mean-
And I'm simplifying that.
Yeah, I don't
understand.
think you can.
Can you look at a person and say, oh, that's an American? Besides being a little overweight, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm just
Right,
joking, I'm
right.
just saying. But
Yeah.
I mean, you know, using America as an analogy, no, you can't. You
Right.
can't say that's an American. This is what an American looks like.
Yeah. So we're going to look at those kind of things and think about what is Scripture. Do we have certain characteristics? Do we have certain clues that indicate to us
Right.
who they're going to be? Like in the 30s and 40s, when people began to uncover this teaching, let's call it, which was primarily brought forward in what's called now British Israelism. They began to look at texts which indicate that these descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would become world powers. They would control the gates of their
Right,
enemies. And you look at these colonial ideas and you go, it's pretty obvious that this is talking about the British Isles, the Isles of the Sea. And now look, there's some brilliant deductions made from some of those early investigators. But I think there's a lot more to it, and we're going to try to unpack that.
I'm sure you're going this way, in that the only way truly to know who is one of his children is by the way they act and the way their
That's
heart
it,
is.
Dave.
I like,
That's
the way,
it.
I like the way you brought that up, Dave. That caused me to think here. I thought a couple instances of that, but what makes, and I saw this said almost the same way, and you guys know I like to watch movies because I do reviews, but this was called A Bridge of Spies. And this one lawyer says, well, you're German Italian, I'm Irish. What makes us American? What makes an American?
Right.
We sign on to a contract, a charter, that is the Constitution of the United States. When you swear to
That
that,
makes you an
that
American.
makes you an American.
Right.
What makes you a Hebrew?
Swear on to something.
You're swearing
The
into
covenant.
the Torah.
The
You're swearing
covenant of God.
onto
Yeah.
the Hebrew scriptures. That's what makes you a Hebrew. Not necessarily
color
your
of
color of
your
your skin or your
No.
hair or anything else.
No,
All right, so one of the things that we've got to go through is there's quite a bit actually, but let me just give you a taste of what we're working towards in the prophets. I'm going to read you from Zechariah 10, verse 6 and following. I will strengthen the house of Judah, and I will save the house of Joseph. All right? Which is going to bring us ultimately to what does it mean to be saved, right?
Right.
We all kind
Yeah.
of grew up in a different understanding.
Yeah.
I will bring them back because I have compassion on them, and they shall be as though I had not rejected them. For I am Jehovah their God, and I will answer them. Then Ephraim, notice the names. You got to get this to get who we're talking about. Ephraim shall be like a mighty warrior, and their hearts shall be glad as with wine. Their children shall see it and be glad. Their hearts will rejoice in the Lord, in Jehovah. I will whistle for them and gather them in, for I have redeemed them, and they shall be as many as they were before. Though I scattered them among the nations, not nation, the nations,
the people.
yet in far countries they shall remember me, and with their children they shall live and return. I'll bring them home from the land of Egypt and gather them from Assyria, and I will bring them back to the land of Gilead and to Lebanon till there's no room for them. It goes on and on and on. So what we're doing initially, back to the question that kind of got us into some of this was, is this just a rehash? Well, when it says in Zechariah 10, I'm going to whistle for them and bring them back from Egypt and Assyria, does that mean that they're still just waiting there in Egypt and Assyria? And they're like, well, what about all the... No, it's talking the same way Isaiah 11 does about the initial points of dispersion. Isaiah 11 does the same thing. It says, I will reach my hand again a second time and bring in the exiles from this place, this place, this place. You kind of have to get the big picture, the big map, and go, I get it. Now, what I'm going to give you as a heads up, and you probably know this, they didn't just stay together in little pockets or big pockets. From those initial deportations, something happens to them.
That's where it can get. I don't want to use the word confusing, but that's when most people, the idea of what happened fails because they were totally dispersed.
Yeah.
You say.
So,
Well, your country's
If-
gone.
They didn't go.
If-
We'll try and move over here, and
Everything's
they didn't do that.
so if I'm considering whether or not I'm one of the lost tribes, does that mean that I'm an exile to this day? I'm in exile.
When you hear a
If
whistle,
you are,
Yeah.
and again, let me establish, you and I could be Hittites.
Yeah.
All right. But let's say you
Depends
are.
on the way
Let's
you-
say that
if you're
you
deaf.
could be one of the lost tribes of Israel who ended up here. Now there are people who laugh and scoff at that. I know
Yeah.
that. But what we're going to do is we're going to look biblically at how would you know. Now, some people go
Yeah.
get your DNA tested, and if it matches
Right,
the Ashkenazi or the Sephardic, then you know. Look,
What
we're
do they
only
call them?
talking about a
Indicators?
small pocket. Like Sylvia says, we're not talking about itty-bitty tribes. We're talking about masses of people, like millions of people,
Right.
millions and millions and millions.
Yep.
And they're missing. Where are they? They went somewhere.
Just out of curiosity, what's the Hebrew term there? The whistle. What is that?
I don't know.
Is it quickly?
I don't know.
No whistle.
And
What's that mean?
and I have a question because
Like a dog whistle. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
only
I'm
dogs
looking
can
for
hear
it.
it,
You
though,
brought
and
up-
if he whistles,
okay.
only Hebrew can hear it.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. The dog. That's not a good thing. To be a dog is not a good thing. Okay, so I'm sorry, Dave, go ahead, you finish
No,
your,
wait,
your thought.
I'm just curious about
Hiss or whistle.
hiss, a whistle, or a noise.
Yeah, basically.
You hear a noise.
Like
mean,
a voice crying
Yeah,
in the
you know
wilderness.
the way I'm crazy thinking there. If you're deaf, there's still a way.
Yeah,
I mean, you
because
can't-
it's like a voice crying in the wilderness.
Yeah.
You don't hear it with your ears, you hear it with your
It's
heart.
not so much a physical thing there, although it could be. It could be a horn blast or whatever. But it's
Well, and there are passages
it's a
which talk
notation.
about with the sound of a shofar.
Yeah, that's what I
Right.
was gonna say,
Exactly.
that could
Exactly.
do
Yeah.
something. Okay, so exile, to me, the connotation coming from a fundamental Christian background, exile is like separated from God. Spiritually, I'm trying to understand if I'm exiled from God, God's people, God's way. How do I walk this out
You-
during my lifetime? I
well-
may not ever see
Well, first of all,
this, you know.
God didn't exile you from God.
No,
They exiled themselves from God.
Okay.
Because they were worshiping
You-
idols.
Right. mixing metaphors,
because
though.
because you bring up the sin, and in the reading this week, sin does separate you. It causes you to go into exile, because that's one of the consequences.
And some of us are born people, some of whoever this group is, are born into the exile because they're way back in the line. Their parents rebelled and were scattered and all that. It says in the Bible over and over, when you return to your heart, you find yourself in the exile, whether that be in the furthest parts of heaven, it says. From there, if you seek me, you will find me.
Yep.
So that's where it starts. So
Okay.
it's not like you go, well, I'm in America and somewhere back in my line, maybe I was one of these people, but I'm hopelessly lost. No, the biblical message is you are where you are geographically. Where are you spiritually?
That's the point.
Where and that's
the
so
point.
the return begins in another land. The call to return to the land. It happens to Jacob. It happened to Abraham. Part of the reason I'm going through this to show you the geography, Abraham is amongst idolaters in a land of idolatry, and it says, plural, they served other gods. He might be participating in idolatry for all we know from Joshua 24. But he's called out of that to go to a place that I'll show you. The biblical message is that ultimately these people will physically return. They'll physically return. Now, will that be the people who are alive today who are waking up, or will it be their grandchildren or their great-grandchildren, or will it be next month? I don't know. I don't know yet. We're just working through the text, and it's very important that we look at these and say, okay, are you going to identify these people because they're a certain group, a race, an ethnic group, whatever? Are you going to be able to identify them because they're grandmammy, grandpappy, whatever, wore a kippah, or what? Is that it? Or are they going to be among idolaters? Are they going to be scattered among all nations? In other words, what is the biblical criteria? And then how are they going to act?
Yeah.
Now, this is where it gets tricky. Dave, you brought this up. It really, people go, well, that's not quantitative. I can't really identify.
Can't
I
put it in a
need
box.
something else. But what if the text really says that you're going to return to your heart? You're going to circumcise your heart. Can I see that?
No,
No.
but you can see the results of
You
it.
can see the result. When God talks
think
about
Yeshua
pouring
said
His
something about that.
Spirit, well, so did all the prophets. What did God say? He's going to pour His Spirit out on them, and they're going to spring up in dry ground.
A lot of times, I've heard people, and it's even on some of the text here, is like, only the Holy Spirit's going to do this. And I'm not making fun of this.
No, I
But
understand.
to your point, it's like, yeah, the Holy Spirit's going to bring our hearts back, the people's hearts back. That's what's going to turn them. The people
But you still
Yeah.
have free will.
are
and free
going to
choice.
want the
Yeah.
Spirit of God
Yeah.
in them.
You have to
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This group.
right.
Well,
And
I mean,
this
that's
group
the
will
whole
receive it.
Seek me when you
It's
seek
gonna be a
me,
big
you'll
group.
find me. You search for with all your heart.
To answer part of Dave's question, though, on today's discussion, those 10 tribes where they're sitting there on that piece of paper,
Right.
you got a
Yeah,
group of
go on.
people that are vomited out of the land because they rejected God. They're doing idols. They don't necessarily believe in Him anymore. Now they don't have a government. They don't have a country. They don't have a king. They got nothing. They're under somebody else's rule. Maybe the family's together. Maybe it's not. Maybe they got spread out in that area. Who
I
knows?
even have texts that say that. We're going to talk about that.
And so what happens is, you had a wife and a couple of children, now you're by yourself in some city working for somebody for next to nothing, and you get an opportunity to get out of there and you go, this is real life, and you get a chance to get on a caravan or do something else. And so these people are, they're getting out from underneath their yoke. They're still who they are, and they're running, they're going. Try and get life back or something.
We have, the story is told in the pages of the Bible. What a lot of people think is that we have to speculate. And what I want to show is that we don't, and we're not. And the reason we're building this and the reason we're going through it laboriously is because as we establish, like right now, I've just brought us to the point where the northern kingdom is in exile, the southern kingdom is not. Now again, Judah and some of the others who joined with Judah are there and they remain. Right? 1 Kings 17, it says, and only the tribe of Judah remain, but they mean, and those associated with it. The other tribes are gone. What can we find in Scripture that tells us what happens next? Now, a lot of people start the guesswork now. They begin to say, well, we know, look at Deuteronomy 28, verse 64 and following. Look at Deuteronomy 4:27 and following. Well, easy. Let's work through. What happens? What happens? And what do these prophets say to these groups? Like I have texts from Josephus that talk about their views of this group. Where were they at then? I have rabbinic texts where the speculation comes in. What we want to do is begin with Scripture, look at all these other sources, and say, now, when somebody comes back, when one of these come back, or a group of these begin to come back, does the Bible give us any hint, what they're going to do or say? Is there a way to tell? And I believe there is, according to the Bible. That's how we're going to work through this. We're going to look at what do the texts say. And that's what's going to be exciting about this is because we're peeling it open.
There goes that onion again.
There's that onion. That's
Do you
right.
think you'll have to having a circumcised heart will be a requirement to see?
Well,
This is what this means.
What
I
comes
see.
first there? You know?
yeah, there's
yeah.
there are two,
You're not
two,
gonna-
two main texts.
No, I mean, I'm talking about seeing prophecy fulfilled, like the prayer that you pray. Open my eyes that I can behold.
I think we ought to be praying that.
Yeah.
The prophets talk about how there's some with eyes but they don't see, some with ears that don't
Right.
hear. That's talking in terms of, and I'm going to use a phrase, somebody will say, a spiritual blindness and a spiritual deafness. We talked last week about a spiritual harlotry. There are these concepts that are expounded in the Bible. But again, you have Deuteronomy 10 and Deuteronomy 30. And one of them it says, circumcise therefore your own heart. Another one says, Jehovah himself will circumcise. Well, which one is it?
Right.
Is it me or is it him? Or, some people go, well, I'm not going to go back because it says the Lord will bring them back. Well, I mean, you have a couple of different options here.
You desire for your heart to be right, but you just don't have the power to do it.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I look at it. It's like,
Yeah.
I want my heart to be right, so
Help me help you.
Yeah. So who gets the credit here?
Well,
It's a mixture. You have to have
The
both.
Lord will bring them back, but it's just like if there'd been a different story if God said, Abraham, walk for yourself, Avram. And he said, no, I'm good here. I'm old. I ain't gonna be doing that.
Yeah.
Ain't gonna happen. I got a nice comfortable house. It's not happening.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, there's this idea, Zechariah 1 and Malachi 3, where it says, return to me and I'll return to you. So there is this idea that
Betty just
we
said
make
that.
a step. Oh yeah, Betty and I think alike. See there? You return to me and I'll return to you. There is a dual application. Our will works together with his will to bring this about. Again, when under Herzl and the Zionist mentality before Herzl even, and I'm using the term Zionist in a very broad sense, not a typical political definition. But when these returnees, before Judah returned in mass, a lot of people had begun to spiritualize all of this. Hey, it really doesn't mean the literal land. It doesn't mean literally
Right,
the people.
right.
It's all a heart thing.
I grew up here, and the Holy Land isn't over there. The Holy Land is wherever
Yeah.
people love
But
God.
that has since
Yeah.
now people can look and go,
For the
you know
hell
what?
is.
It's literal.
that's true.
So I think there's both elements that we have to consider as we work.
Can you, Miriam's bringing up Christian writings. Romans 11:25 states that blindness has happened to Israel in part until the fullness of the Gentiles come in. Ross, please explain what in part means.
I will get into that just briefly. Romans 11:25. There is this idea. First of all, let me look at another phrase in this, and it says, "When the fullness of the Gentiles be come in." In Hebrew, if that were translated from the English to the Greek to the Hebrew, it would be melo hagoyim, the fullness of the Gentiles, which is only used in one other passage, which we're going to get into. It's in Genesis. Between chapter 48 and 49, I'm giving you sort of a broad category where we talk about Ephraim and Manasseh. Now, some people go, well, I don't believe Paul, I'm Jewish, or I don't have the New Testament, I'm not Christian, I don't like any. What I'm saying is that his writing, he is appealing to, he's making a point that Israel in part, this blindness in part has happened to Israel. But is it, in other words, in that same chapter, he talks about branches broken off from an olive tree. Look, there are a lot of academic papers out there where they're interpreting this very clearly in the light of what we're talking about, the Israelites coming back. I mean, look, it's not it's not saying that there are wild cherry branches that are grafted into an olive tree. These are olive branches grafted into a domesticated, or what would you call it?
Native.
A native tree. So, but we're going to get into that. But this idea of Romans 11 is one of, I want to do one complete class later on the Christian writings and how they viewed the tribes. But I'm also going to do the rabbinic writings and what did they say. We have some rabbis, very well-known rabbis, who said they're not coming back. But what was the consensus? What did they believe? We're going to talk about the legends of the Sambatian River. What is that? I mean, there were stories about how the tribes were scattered beyond a certain river, and they couldn't get back. But then they said, "Wait a minute! This river stops its flow once a week on the Sabbath." And anyway, what are they really trying to talk about?
Oh my gosh. Bringing back a dream I had about India and a river.
That's right.
I've heard that.
once a week on the Sabbath. It's
Yeah.
like-
Yeah.
It flows the other way, yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't even, a lot of times you can go with the moon and the gravity
Right,
and all that
but that
stuff,
weekly
changing
thing,
tides.
that weekly
But
thing
weekly,
What if I told you that
New
there
moon, old
is
moon.
an actual river that this
Does
once every
maybe in a certain
Check it out.
area that there is some reason that there's a legend about this? We'll
Oh, yeah,
talk
yeah,
about
yeah.
that.
I can see it. I mean, it happening every once in a while, but like you set your watch by it, or
You might be surprised.
Old Faithful.
Probably not.
Might be surprised. So look, this study, I want to look at mainly, as always, the text of the Hebrew Bible is my source and inspiration.
Right.
And I also want to entertain what are some of the views of this group. Where did they go? Who are they now? Everything that we can bring to the table or to the map or to the dry erase board that gives us some indication. Will you be able to look at them and tell by their skin color or their habits or, see, these are different views.
You were talking about lore. Is there anything like that when we were watching that one show that showed the documentary from the Egyptian scribe on the Exodus? Is there anything from that part of the world that's documented other than lore about these tribes when because obviously if you bring a few 100,000 people in the area, it's noteworthy. You see what I'm
Yes. No, we do have.
saying? Okay.
We absolutely do have.
That's not rabbinic. It's
Absolutely.
Not Christian, it's
We have Assyrian writings.
Wow.
We have Babylonian writings. We have discoveries that were made that list actually the deportations and the number from these places.
Cool.
So we have historically documented actual things that corroborate the biblical story and shed some light on this. Look, there's a lot out there on this. We're not in as big of a place of guessing and speculating as people think. But that's why I left it the way I did today. What happens to them? Do we know or do we not know? And will they come back? And if they did, how would they come back? And what about Judah, the only tribe left? Are they going to be good boys and girls or not? It's the heart of the biblical message.
You have to come back here
Oh my
next week
goodness,
and find
it's a
out.
soap opera.
Huh?
You have to show in next week to find out, right?
You got to tune in.
Yeah,
This
you gotta-
isn't like Netflix. You can't just binge them all. You got to wait a week and hope that I'm somehow pulling something together for
Well,
the next class.
I don't have it corroborated, but I was watching an archaeological show that indicated that after the folks came back from Babylon, after the 70 years of exile, that archaeologically in their digs, they didn't find in the homes of the Jewish people there, they didn't find any more idols. So I'm just saying.
One lesson that seems to have been learned by Judah
No more idols.
is that idolatry is not a big problem.
Not a big.
It's not a
don't
big
do
problem.
That. Yeah.
It's really not. It's not at all, let's say. I'm talking about in Orthodoxy. And extra care and caution has been in place since probably 586, right? Those that came back, now, are there other problems? Do we have other issues? Do we have another expulsion? Absolutely. But what was that based on and what caused that? We'll get into that. We want to really just take this subject because it really is the biblical story. It's the story of the people of God and what happened to them. Where did they go? Where are they now? You know those old "Where Are They Now?" where you look at somebody that was popular in a older show and what are they doing now?
Page 2,
Yeah.
the rest of the story.
That's right.
Who was that guy?
This is
Paul Harvey.
Paul
Yeah.
Harvey, yeah.
Paul Harvey.
How quickly they
So I'm excited about this. I look at the people that I get to share with. I know I'm blessed because most of you have been studying for a long time, and so I know that we as a group are learning together. As long as we remain humble and teachable, me and you,
Right.
and we work together and we let the text be our guide, and history will oblige and give us pointers all along the way.
Johnny says his Bible doesn't have Romans in it.
I know what his Bible does. I think I gave him his last one. So, but it's very important that we not only explore the Hebrew Bible on this subject. I'm going to look at a lot of ancient text, and I think it's important because if you want, just like you brought up, do we have any evidence from the Assyrians? Well, we do. So let's talk about that. And then whatever ultimately happens to them, what if I told you that the where to look, the place to look for these groups is very interesting what turns out, I think, to bring these groups together. Very interesting, and that's going to be pretty far down the road, but I
Sure,
think you
there's
might
some
be
people
surprised.
with those texts that said, oh, that's just coincidence, like they did with the Egyptian scribe
Yeah.
that wrote about the
Yeah,
Exodus.
that's right.
Oh, just.
Yeah, yeah, and they say, well, the timing is off. But
Yeah.
part of the reason the timing is off, for instance, on the Exodus, in their minds, is they go, we don't want to look at that Egyptian scribe's writing because it's too early. And the reason they come to that conclusion is they have a couple of stakes in the ground. One is the reference in the Exodus story to the Israelites building Ramesses, and the scholars go, well, Ramesses isn't until 1200s. I'm ballparking it. And so they put the Exodus too far this way, too modern, too new, too late, and so or too early. You know, it doesn't match this tale from the Egyptian scribe. They've also looked at archaeology of the conquest of the land. We have evidence of a great conquest that happened, but it doesn't date to this same time frame to the 1200s, 1300, right? It's early. So they go, well, this isn't the Exodus story. This isn't the conquest of the land under Joshua. It's a different time period. But what if they're wrong? What if the dating is wrong?
Their phrase that they use over and over again is common thinking. Common thinking is the Exodus happened at this time,
What they
and
mean is, that's
therefore
what my professor told
we're
me.
not going to even look
That's right.
at anything else.
We've already
because
got our minds made
We've
up.
already got our minds made
Yeah.
up. We were told as students that this is when it happened, and
By
that's it.
God.
I
yeah.
know, I
That's
know.
it.
I see that when I brought it up earlier talking to one of our sons about, because he studied cultural anthropology. He believes this is what the professor said,
He helps us out here. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he does.
Yeah.
He's a
No, but there-
good, he's a good
Do not-
son.
do
He's a
not
good
throw him
son.
under the bus.
I'm
No,
not.
but there are a lot of ideas. There are a lot of ideas that are propounded, that are put forth by
I
brilliant
wasn't
people
going to say who it was.
who
He can run
understand
that
an
computer from
element.
his house. What's
They
that?
understand an element of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and what we want to do is we want to look at all the sides of the evidence and what does the preponderance of evidence lead us to. We want to follow the trail, tracking the tribes. This is what we're doing here. We want to look at geography, history, culture, everything we can bring in that will help us to understand what these prophets are saying and to whom, and how will we identify these groups. That's what it comes down to.
It's just like in paleontology when they were first finding the dinosaur bones. All the things that they said, this is this particular, they had the wrong head on the wrong body
Sure.
in the Smithsonian Museum
'Cause
for
that one was eating this one.
decades.
Yeah.
Understand? And
Because
they take a little
that's
tooth
what
and they
the-
build a whole thing out of it.
Yeah, that's what that's what the paleontologist said
Yeah, we got his
it
son.
was,
Right.
what it looked like. And no one questioned it. No one said a word about it. Everybody was like, "Oh yeah, you're
The
right."
emperor's got new clothes.
And
Same
and
thing.
then suddenly, decades down the road, somebody went,
He's naked.
Well, even in
That's not right.
in the scriptures, there's a lot of places in there. Not a lot. There are several places in there that you had mentioned that this place is called such and such, and it was called this.
Yeah.
So if you've now got a town that's denoted as Ramses,
Yep.
what was it called before it was that?
Yeah, that's
because
right.
they've been there for a long time. They,
Avaris.
if you look at other places around that area, they just build on top of building on top of building. And
Yeah.
so, if you're doing your archaeological work and you go, well, I think I found it. Well, maybe you didn't dig far enough down.
Yeah.
Look, we're going together.
Man.
We're going to uncover some wonderful things, and I appreciate when new people come in and offer their perspectives. And I think that when we begin to truly look at this together, we're going to find out that God's plan is quite massive. It incorporates ultimately the whole world. There is this special group that we have to nail down first. We have to figure this out, and as best we can, from the biblical text. And I think as we work together, we're going to uncover some really fun and exciting studies. So hopefully you're enjoying this. By the way, Joanne says hello, Mark, and others are glad to see you here.
Hello, hello.
They're used to seeing all of us, and when you can make it every few weeks, we'd love to see you. So we encourage all of you to come. And don't forget Sukkot. If you can make it for that weekend, October 18 through 20, please come.
And register.
And register online. That's right. John and them heard me griping about this. Yes, register online. I need your registration. In fact, let me post that right now because United Israel's website, we have a registration page. We're not charging for registration. You don't have to pay, but you do, please, need to register because that helps us as a local group make your stay here that much more enjoyable. We're going to have fun, but we need to know who's coming. So I'm going to post this right now, and if you think you might come, then register. Let me see if I can paste it in here. I'm looking. My screen has
It's posted of all the people that are coming.
I do so far, those that have registered so far. If you're coming, let's see, I'm trying, here we go.
Yesterday it was like 56 or something.
58.
You'll see, we have right now 58 officially registered, I believe, unless people have registered so far. I just posted a link. You'll see it. Click the link. Register if you're coming in person. If you're watching online, we're not going to be able to do all of it online, but what we do, you'll be part of it anyway. But if you're coming, I need you to register. So, all right. Well, that was fun. I hope that everybody can join us next week, and we'll take this story another step. See what we can do. What happens to those people? Where do they go?
I want to know what happens next.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Chicago.
Join us next week.
You get on the other side of the river there,
Does
buddy.
anybody really know
How
what
big a
time
river are
it
you
is?
talking about?
Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see you next
See you
week.
next
Shabbat
week.
shalom.
Have a beautiful week.